Welcome back. Very good morning. If you've just joined us, although elephant and rhino poaching are the key focus at this year's CITES convention, the spotlight is also now turning to lion populations. Due to the sport of hunting, lion populations across Africa have seen a significant decline. Now, according to an International Union for Conservation of Nature report, lions were possibly extinct in Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Rwanda and Togo now. Now, joining us in studio is Dr. Jimmiel Mandima, who's the Director of Program Design and Partner Relations at African Wildlife Foundation. A very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. It's good to be here and talk about wildlife.
On that note, first up, we're asking our viewers a question today with regards, because this has been the discussion coming out of the weekend with regards to CITES. Discussions around legalizing ivory and rhino horn trade. How do you view this?
Great question. We have certainly seen in the last 7 years an escalation of poaching for elephants to get ivory and killing of rhinos for the rhino horn. So as an organization, we believe that wildlife and wildlands in Africa are one of their greatest assets, and they should contribute to the modernization of Africa and its prosperity. And because there is illegal poaching and trade, we would want to support the banning of trade in these commodities to be sure that there are systems in place to be accountable, to make sure that Africa is not losing its resources, because this is being driven by syndicates, not necessarily benefit the local communities and Africans.
When we talk about, before we carry on with what's happening with rhino horn, of course the high profile one, and now we see an escalation in ivory trade. I want to ask you about what's happening with the lion populations across the continent, and how concerned are you with this?
In the same vein, we actually believe that the big five are the definers of Africa, and lions are a big part of ecosystem function. We have seen them being persecuted usually because of retaliatory killings by farmers when they kill their livestock. We have seen them being persecuted also because of the shrinkage of habitats as populations encroach into the land for habitats. So we believe lions also should be protected and be able to serve Africa through ecotourism, photographic safaris, etc. So our positions for all the iconic species is that Africa and the global community should take a step back and put systems in place until we are convinced by good science that these populations can be viable. And right now, lions are not. We know they've already gone extinct in 5 rich countries, and we don't believe they should continue.
You're talking about extinction in 5 different countries. Here in South Africa, we have a very controversial practice called canned hunting. I'm sure you know all about canned hunting and what happens with lions. How do you view this? Some say that, yes, we need this in order to conserve a lion for future population.
It's always a contentious issue when it comes to the manner in which wildlife is actually bred for different purposes. In principle, as an organization, we believe wildlife should be in the wild. At the same time, we do respect the interest and passion of different players, including those South African farmers that are producing lion. What we realize that is often, depending on the systems that are put in place, we may actually be able to rob that ability of the lions to really move around and be part of marking and shaping the ecosystems. So while we respect that, our belief is let us all work as a global community, South Africa included, to see that the lion population is viable and viable in the wild.
Now, when we talk about rhino and the escalation that we're seeing in ivory trade, what would you, as the AWF, like to see happen? Let's start with ivory and then rhino horn trade stroke rhino farming, those 2 concepts.
So on ivory, at this point, we are very clear, and our position is the global community should close the trade in ivory, because we realize that while some range countries do have large populations that are viable, and again, congratulations for their hard work to protect them, we also have range countries that have lost a lot of elephants. And for the global good, and in particular for Africa, we should stop all trade in ivory and completely declare that ivory has no commercial value when it is off the elephants. That means closing domestic markets.
Yeah.
That means closing and getting nations to collaborate and forget about political boundaries and work as one community.
And rhino horn trade and rhino farming specifically, we see a big lobby in South Africa for rhino farming. What do you say about that?
So our belief is that when rhino farming started, it was a business and well-intended. But at this juncture, given the rate at which rhinos are being poached, we know we're losing over 1,000 rhinos every year plus, and there is every investment going on to try and protect them. And our position is because of that, and unfortunately a lack of systems in place globally to monitor what is being traded legally and illegally, we again would want a complete stoppage of that trade. And as for the farmers, we recognize their good intentions and believe that they need now to negotiate with the entire global community and push for systems to put in place that who knows what happens in the future. But right now, the global community is not prepared to be able to allow for trade simply because we don't have the checks and balances that are distinguished between legal and illegal rhino horn.
Now, CITES, of course, is taking place here in Johannesburg. It's been on for the weekend. We've seen the first outcomes. What would you like to see happen at CITES the rest of the week?
As an organization, we want us to go beyond listing or uplisting or downlisting, but to simply say, with the information we have now regarding some of the endangered species, what decisions should we make together as a global community for the benefit of viable population into future generations? So what I would want to hope to happen is any of those contested positions regarding ivory, regarding rhino horn, regarding lions, would basically be able to generate positive debate and say, yes, we recognize some sacrifices have got to be made by those that are doing good, but then for the good, again, of the global community, for ecosystems, for future generations, I hope that we come out of this conference of parties with a clear agreement on maintaining positions that will ensure that our wildlife will endure forever, and that in particular elephants, rhinos, lions, pangolins, and the rest of the list of the 35,000 species that CITES has got to make a decision on.
I thank you for joining us today. That's Dr. Jimmiel Mandima. He's the Director of Program Design and Partner Relations at the African Wildlife Foundation. Of course, we're dealing with CITES COP17 taking place in Johannesburg at the weekend and into this week. Now,